So we transition into our next game, which is going to be the Miami Dolphins traveling to San Fran to go and play the 49ers. And this game got out of hand. And my God, this is not necessarily the opposite of what I expected because I did pick San Fran.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what happened? Like, just look again. I saw the game, but I'm just looking at the box score and I'm like, how, where? Like, I was confused. Tua Tagovailoa turned the ball over 3 times, ends up leaving in the fourth, and obviously Jimmy Garoppolo breaks his foot. He's out for the season, and Brock Purdy out of Iowa State, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of the draft just a few years ago, comes into this game, goes 25, 37, 210, 2 tuts, and the 49ers win. So Kyle, I'm going to kick this to you. It's kind of like a two-themed question because it's going to be a question for both teams here. How do the Dolphins bounce back after an embarrassing performance like this? And are the 49ers done without Jimmy Garoppolo?
All right, so I'll start with the Dolphins first. No, I don't think the Dolphins are in like a terrible situation where like they fall apart from here on out because of this game. Kev, we talked about this game in the lead up last week, and I remember mentioning that had either team lost this game, I don't think it would have really hurt them in either way. Because when it comes to the Dolphins are definitely one of the better teams in the AFC as far as I see it. And despite the fact that they're in a very competitive division like the AFC East, they've really shown that they can run it with really good teams and come out on top. Now, in this game in particular, this was a game that they probably could have had a better performance. And this had a lot to do with the fact that obviously, the 49ers losing Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, that's a huge blow as far as I'm concerned. And I thought the Dolphins could have potentially taken advantage of that. They didn't. They left some plays out on the field. That 49ers defense was really up to the challenge because they were able to force some errant passes by Tua. And, the 49ers were able to get some turnovers in the process and turn those turnovers into points. And for the fact that the matter is that, granted, the Dolphins had to go on the road. They had to go all the way to San Francisco for this game. And I expected a much closer game than what we ended up getting. And for the fact that the Dolphins lost this game by 2+ possessions, that's going to be one that stings. Looking back at the film after this weekend, it's going to be tricky just because, I understand that the 49ers have a really good defense, but, you know, the Dolphins have one of the best wide receiving cores in the NFL. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle, you have Mike Gesicki at your tight end spot, and they just weren't able to make the plays that needed to be made. And that's despite the fact that the Dolphins got off to a very good start in this game. Basically, within the first play or two, they had like a 75-yard touchdown, put them up 7-0 early in the first quarter. And yet, throughout the game, just the 49ers were able to string drives along to get points on the board. And then you combine that with what the defense was able to do against the Dolphins. They just made more plays and they ended up being victorious at the end of the day as far as the 49ers are concerned. But when it comes to the Dolphins, look, the Dolphins are still a team to contend with as far as I'm concerned. I mean, hell, even if the Dolphins lost this game, like I said, I'm not too worried about them. Tua has shown me this year to be an effective quarterback. You combine that with the fact that he has a great wide receiving cast to throw to. They run the ball pretty effectively on the ground. This was a letdown game for their defense. Their defense can typically play better than this. So this could be one of those anomalies for them. And I think, when it comes to the Dolphins from here on out, this is a team that we still have to pay pretty close attention to. This is just one of those games that they just let slip from them. And when I look at their schedule from here on out, they've got to go back to, they stay in the West Coast as far as I'm concerned because they play the Chargers next week on the road. Then they got to play the Bills on the road. Then they play the Packers. They play the Patriots. And then they play the Jets. So there's still are some winnable games here. And there's a very good chance that they could finish the season with 11 or 12 wins. And, with that type of win record, they're still going to make the playoffs. They would probably be a wild card team, but I'm at the point where the Dolphins definitely have an advantage. They definitely have a leg up on the competition, not only in their division, but in the NFC to a larger extent. And I still believe that they're a playoff team. Now let's kick it to the 49ers. The 49ers, as far as their Super Bowl chances, it's pretty much over with as far as I see it. When Jimmy went down with that broken foot early in the game, I understand that Brock Purdy came in there and did a solid job in relief. but I don't believe that Brock Purdy is going to be the guy to lead this 49ers offense to the promised land and possibly making a Super Bowl. I just don't see it. I had that faith with Jimmy because Jimmy has shown time and time again that he can lead the 49ers into deep playoff runs. Got them to the NFC Championship game last year, got them all the way to Super Bowl 54, where they unfortunately lost to the Chiefs in Miami that year. But when I look at the 49ers, I still believe that they are a playoff caliber team and a team that could still be quite surprising if they get into the playoffs because nobody expected them to get all the way to the NFC Championship game last year, but they were able to make it happen. And this could be one of those situations where it seems like the odds are stacked against them, and they are really stacked against them because they've lost both of their starting quarterbacks. They've lost both of their starting quarterbacks this year. They lost Trey Lance at the beginning of the year with a torn ACL, and now Jimmy Garoppolo with a broken foot. If Brock Purdy could just maintain the offense to put points on the board and keep this offense viable, I think that's huge. And guess what? They have the requisite pieces outside of the quarterback position to be able to put points on the board. You got Deebo Samuel, who is essentially a Swiss Army knife when it comes to just total effectiveness on an NFL offense. You got Christian McCaffrey, who's one of the best running backs in the league if he can stay healthy. You got Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, and you got George Kittle, who's one of the best tight ends in the game. There are pieces here that Brock can work with to keep this offense viable. So I'm not saying that like they're going to fall apart and they're going to miss the playoffs entirely. That is not the case here. They are still probably the best team in the NFC West as far as I see it. And if their defense can continue to play at the level like they did against the Dolphins this past weekend, this is a team you still have to look out for, that you still have to respect. I don't respect them as much now to possibly make the Super Bowl because Jimmy's out, but I'm not going to count this team out entirely. This team from top to bottom is still very well rounded. It's just we have to see how Brock is going to play from here on out. And I will say, in relief effort, he did a solid job. Had over 200 yards passing, was relatively effective in completing his passes, and put 2 touchdowns on the board. Honestly, that's pretty solid as far as I see it. As a third string quarterback, they're pretty limited to begin with. And the fact that we were able to get a pretty solid performance out of Brock with all the situations that were going on in this game, good on him. But I am gonna say that with Jimmy out for the rest of the year, this team is gonna be tested. It's already been tested with the amount of injuries that they've had this year. But we'll see what happens from here. I still believe the 49ers are a good team. Same goes with the Dolphins. It's just we have to see how each team is gonna move from here on out because each team has its own obstacles to deal with. But I think the 49ers, they're in a little bit of a dicier situation here than the Dolphins. The Dolphins didn't lose their quarterback. The 49ers did. Now we have to see how both teams respond. But Kev, the floor is yours from here. I know I had a lot to say there.
No, you're good, bro. I mean, you've pretty much nailed everything on the head here. I mean, for the most part, I'm kind of just looking at this saying 49ers defense is no joke. There's no question they're the league's best defense. It's not an argument, it's not a discussion. They absolutely annihilated every aspect of the position or every aspect of the term defense that you can. Linebackers played great, corners played great, safety coverage was great, pass rush was amazing. I mean, for God's sakes, Nick Bosa had 3 sacks by himself. So I'd say that that's pretty solid if I had to say so myself. And those were the only 3 sacks that they were able to accumulate on Tua Tagovailoa. But I'm looking at this from a bigger perspective. I will say that the 49ers make the playoffs. This defense is good enough to carry them. This defense is good enough to keep them competitive. Brock, on the other hand, I saw some missed throws, some overthrows, some underthrows, some bad decisions, but he hasn't been practicing with the first team. He hasn't been getting any reps. I think that Kyle Shanahan will prep him as the weeks progress. I think that if they continue to stick with him as the season moves forward, they will be okay. I agree with Kyle. I think their Super Bowl chances are gone, but I think that Brock could still lead them at least to be competitive. In this particular situation, it was a hey, we need you right now. The definition of next man up. Jimmy goes down in the first drive. Kid probably looking like, I've been holding this clipboard all season. What the hell am I supposed to do? And he came in and he played decent. Not great, decent. And as the weeks progress, I believe that he will get better because I think that Kyle Shanahan will prep him, and I think that this defense will keep him in games even if he does struggle. Now, they did say that they were probably going to go out there and sign somebody to not only be his backup, but hopefully a veteran quarterback to just be there in case Brock decides to falter. Um, Happy second birthday to my son Sabo, who is currently on my side. 2 years old today. It is midnight, so had to give him a quick shout out because I've been away from him for a couple of hours. But to get back to the analysis, I think that this was a little bit of a concern for the Dolphins because Tua Tagovailoa struggled. You can blame the ankle. You can blame the fact that Jalen Waddle got hurt early on. You can blame it for the fact that the running game was non-existent. Tua had to step up, and Tua had to show that he could compete against league-leading defenses outside of Buffalo. When he played Buffalo, their defense struggled because there were a lot of injuries when they played early on. There were a lot of people that were already out before the game had started. Now you go up against almost a completely fully loaded and healthy 49ers defense, and you get mopped off the floor. I mean, he had a QBR of 19. Tua couldn't get anything going. He had a fumble and 2 interceptions. He had 3 turnovers today. Unacceptable. Are the Dolphins in panic mode? No, because they still have their starting quarterback. Tyreek Hill still went off. They have Jeff Wilson. They have Raheem Mostert. Like, they know that they have the capabilities to do so. It's more so of the fact of the defense wasn't able to play efficient, and that offensive line struggled to keep Tua protected and clean. So I will say kudos on San Francisco. Wow, words are hard. Kudos to San Francisco. However, they're going to struggle for their own reasons. And then, of course, Miami, I know that they lost and they struggled, but I think that they have a bright future as the season progresses because adversity like this, a tough game like this, will either make or break your season. I think Mike McDaniels, his emotions on the sideline, his face really showed this is not who we are. And I think that he is going to use this as fuel to push the narrative and push the envelope to say, guys, this was an ass whooping. This cannot happen again. And if they want to make the playoffs, now that Buffalo leads the division, I believe that they're going to have to not just win out because of how competitive the AFC is as a whole, but if they don't reclaim that division spot, it's going to be very hard for them to get in there. So I think that there's going to be a decent amount of pressure on the Dolphins moving forward. But still, disappointing in terms of how the game ended up. Happy for the 49ers, disappointed for my brother and his team on the Dolphins. Nevertheless, we will see how it progresses as the weeks go on.